Thanks very much for coming along today. My name's Tony Kane. I'm the team leader for the Prince's Trust team, who Kevin is part of, and it was his idea to hold this debate, and that's all it is, guys. It's not a slang match, it's pure and simply a debate on the rights and wrongs of whether we should be an independent country or not. So we have two speakers with us today. For the Yes campaign we have Gail Lithgow and we have Sophie Sandola from the Better Together campaign. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give the ladies 10 minutes each to put a case forward as to what they think the benefits are for either or, and then we'll get a chance to ask them some questions. Okay, so Gail, if you would mind starting off proceedings, please.
I'll go first. Okay, perfect. Right, my name's Gail Lithgow and I work in the Yes campaign's headquarters in Glasgow. I'm 25 years old, so I'm already feeling like I'm far too old these days. The reason why I'm voting yes is because I would like to see Scotland's vast resources invested in young people and into having a sustainable Scotland. I grew up having Tony Blair as my Prime Minister with the Iraq War and ID cards and inequality and poverty and apathy and people not liking politicians and politicians' expenses and nuclear weapons. And I'm involved in this campaign because I want to change that. I think we need the decision-making power in Scotland in order to change that. There's three key reasons for me why Scotland should be independent. One is that it's right that the decision-making power is in Scotland's hands, that we can hold our politicians more accountable for their decisions, and that we should be making decisions over everything from phone signal masts to our tax rates to what wars we go into. I also think that Scotland can be a much more prosperous and wealthy country. I know we have the natural resources and the human talent and the industries to make Scotland very successful. But then when you see how much money there is in North Sea oil or in the environment around us, in the wind and waves around Scotland, and you think about how much wealth we have, we don't then see that invested in the people of Scotland. We see Scotland becoming increasingly unequal and increasingly impoverished. The UK at the moment is the fourth most unequal country in the entire developed world. So that's including, Japan and the US and all of Europe. The UK is the fourth most unequal out of all of that. And I just think that is ridiculous when Scotland has got the wealth that it's got. And not only are we the fourth most unequal, we're on the course to becoming the most unequal. So we'd be taking over the USA, and we all know that the USA has got a lot of issues with inner city poverty. And the fact that there's going to be such a huge gap between rich and poor in the UK is just shocking. So for me, the important thing here is that we stop that logjam and we take a different path. And the only way we can take that different path is by voting yes. Now, there's the flip side of that is, well, why should there be poverty in Manchester or in London, but not poverty in Glasgow? I was born in Essex, and half of my family are all in England, so it's got nothing to do with nationality or anything like that. I don't see us changing this declining path that we're going on unless we're able to do something about it. There are progressive voices in England that are saying, come on, Scotland, be the progressive beacon, show us how we can do better. And we've already done that in a lot of cases where we have got some powers. So in Scotland, we've got power over education, and we've made tuition free. We have power over health, and so we have made prescriptions free in Scotland to have more equality. But what we also know is that cancer mortality in poorer areas is 76% worse. There is nothing that the NHS can do about that. What that shows is that in deprived areas there is an issue that is making people iller, and we therefore need the powers over the economy to make sure that everyone is economically equal as well as kind of socially equal. So that's why it's really important that the decision-making powers are in our own hands. We have some control over some things, but it's not far enough. We need the full decision-making powers in our own hand, and then we can be a progressive beacon to show the rest of the UK, the rest of Europe, the rest of the world what we can do differently, and that we can change people's lives and have transformational change. So for me as well, before I started this job, I was unemployed for 5 months, and tons of my friends have left uni or college and are unemployed as well. I have no faith whatsoever that London politicians are going to be able to do anything to help me or my kind of everyone that's my age. There is a huge problem with unemployment, and I don't think they've got the answers. So I think we need the decision-making powers in our hands to make the most of investment of our vast resources back into the economy and back into people's lives. So at the end of the day, on the 18th September, we've got two paths in front of us that we can choose. One is to vote no and to continue the decline in the inequality of the UK, or we can vote yes and we can create our own future. That is the only way we can be certain about our own future, is to actually create it ourselves. And so it's not going to happen overnight. There is a huge mountain to climb after a yes vote to make lives better for everyone. But I only see us being able to do that if we're able to make those decisions ourselves. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Sophie and I'm studying in Edinburgh right now, but I grew up in Ayr and I'm 18. So this will be my first time voting, and it will be a very significant time. It will be the biggest decision that all of us have to make in our lives. The case for the union is a positive one. I think that in Scotland the appeal is more to unity and solidarity than to division. Nationalism is a thing of the past. Nowadays we have all the sharing of information, ideas on Facebook, Skype. Putting up barriers it's in the past. And there are so many benefits that we get as part of the UK, and we're far better off being in the UK. And if we were to leave, we would be relying on North Sea revenues, which is highly volatile, to rely on that single source. 1 to 2% of England's expenditure is made up of our oil revenues, but 10 to 20% of our revenues are made up from oil revenues. We have thousands of Scottish people working across the rest of the UK, and this is without needing a passport or any sort of pass or anything like that. We have 1 million people in Scotland relying on their pensions from the UK welfare state. Scotland makes up 8.4% of the UK population, but we make up 9.3% of the UK's expenditure, so we do benefit greatly from the UK in that way. Universities, 15% of UK research into universities is spent in Scotland, and we only make up 8.4% of the population. There are so many areas that are going to be uncertain, like the EU. No new member state has managed to join the EU without having to negotiate lots of areas, like joining the Schengen zone. It's where all our borders are open up to people, and this would mean potentially, if we had to join the Schengen zone, then there would be borders between Scotland and the UK. No new state has yet managed to negotiate an opt-out of the euro, so we might have to join the euro, lose the pound, and then we have the whole currency debate over whether we can keep the pound, because numerous experts, Alistair Darling, have said that there's no certainty that we would be able to keep the euro, to keep the pound, and there's just no certainty over that. We also benefit in terms of what we gain from each other. Our shared cultures, the past we've created together, our pioneering engineers and entrepreneurs have made Scotland a world centre for engineering. We have a huge affection to our UK Armed Forces. Our thousands of Scottish people every day around the globe, each day, are fighting or representing the country. And we don't want to lose our stand on the world stage either. We're in hundreds of embassies, that's how we're represented. And those are UK seats. We would lose our seat on the General Assembly Security Council. There would be no certainty. A lot is possible in an independent Scotland. I'm optimistic for anything. Anything is possible. But the fact is, right now, we know we have all this for certain, and in independent Scotland, we don't have that. So these are the common sense arguments, I would say, but it's also an argument of the heart, because I'm really patriotic for the UK as well as Scotland. I was born British and Scottish. I brandish a Union flag as I do tartan. I support Andy Murray in Wimbledon as I do Team GB in the Olympics. I just love the UK and Scotland. I just don't want to give that up, and that's why I'm here fighting for the UK.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's your chance to ask some questions.
I'll ask one for
Carrie
Ann. Carrie Ann's got a 3-year-old daughter. So how would independence affect childcare?
Okay, in a sense that's quite an easy one, because what the Scottish Government has put forward is that they would double childcare for 3 to 4 year olds, which is, I think, is really important, not only because it supports the economy, gets more women in work, but it also means there's an actual chance of gender equality, because women will start getting better pay for the work that they do. So for me, that's quite important. So a doubling of childcare to levels that are close to what Scandinavia has, I think is quite important. So for me, I'm not yet thinking about kids because I'm 25, but it's something that me and my partner are talking about, and I would really resent being the one stuck at home and not being able to work because there's no childcare, and I can't afford childcare because it isn't affordable in the UK. Wages are not high enough to be able to afford childcare. It's just a fact. And so what's exciting about this is it means that if Scotland votes yes, there's a guarantee of like transformational childcare provisions in the UK. But not only that, the Scottish Government said that they would increase, we've got the minimum wage in the UK, which is, I don't know how much it is just now, about £5 something or other. They're promising something called a living wage, which is different from the minimum wage, but because it actually, rather than just being the bare necessity to survive, it is the ability to actually live on that wage and to afford childcare. So I think that's also really important. Not only is the free childcare being doubled, but the actual ability through the living wage for people in Scotland means they can actually afford childcare better as well. So for me, that's a huge plus point into why I should vote yes.
Okay, first of all, the Scottish Government already has a lot of powers devolved to it, and that one of those things is including local government. So childcare could have already, what we have devolved, that can be used to improve childcare. And coming from the pledge in the white paper, there isn't really any proof that that could actually happen, and there isn't much space left in the white paper for actual sums. And where that money is going to come from, it'd probably have to come from somewhere else. We already have this huge gap, 9.3% of UK spending, but 8.4% of the population. That needs to be made up either in tax rises or public spending cuts.
Okay, so childcare is devolved in Scotland already. So if the Scottish Government had the money, they should have invested it. And I would, if they had been irresponsible and had not invested in childcare where they could have done, I would have been really angry at them. The problem is the Scottish Government kind of lives on pocket money from Westminster. They just get a lot, they just get a set amount, and they can't decide where that money goes other than within very limited back brackets. So when you say that where Sophie says there's going to be a deficit of 9.3%, the real figures are that we contribute more into the UK Treasury through our oil and gas and through all our industry and so all the revenues that Scotland gives is something called is 9.9%, yet we only get 9.3% back. But what if you actually think about it, we're only 8.4 of the Scottish of the UK population, yet we put 9.9%, and that's nearly 10%, which is it's about 1.5% difference. Doesn't sound that much, but that actually equates into billions of pounds, which is about £824 per person per year. So in a sense, our finances are stronger. We have a stronger case for it, but we therefore need the decision-making power to decide where this money goes. So at the moment, we would scrap Trident. That's about £163 billion that we would save, and that is where we could put money into childcare or put money into free education and invest in people's lives. We don't currently have any say over whether Trident goes ahead or not. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that we're spending money on weapons that will indiscriminately kill thousands of people and ruin thousands more lives. And it's just politicians on the world stage gossiping about how big theirs are in comparison to the other ones. To me, that's reprehensible that is allowed to happen, and yet we aren't investing in these things in Scotland. So I really think we need the decision-making power in Scotland to be able to decide not to invest in bombs, but to invest in bairns.
Well, we still have the option. The option goes on to change the government as it is now. If we were independent, people would still vote. It's still a democracy, to make sure that we get the people in government making the decisions we want them to make. So we still have a chance to change a government in Scotland to make them change childcare. We can still make changes just when we're in the UK, just as we always have elections every 5 years in Westminster, 4 years in Scotland.
And I would really love if at a UK level they would invest in health and in education and in inequality rather than in weapons of mass destruction. But all of the UK parties support Trident. I've grown up, I know like my parents and my neighbours and stuff, for them the Labour Party meant something and it had values and it invested in people in Scotland and in the working classes. But I have grown up with Tony Blair, and Ed Miliband's no different, and all the shadow cabinet aren't any different either. They're all exactly the same. I think a most recent statistic came out that only 4% of the members of Parliament in Westminster were from working class backgrounds. And you just think, they don't even represent us. And I just don't see the parties changing it. I think we need a political change in Scotland to actually achieve this for us. Are you moderating?
Stephen, really good discussions there, and I really like the comment of don't invest in bombs, invest in bairns.
Yeah.
It's a nice wee tagline. But obviously, what we're seeing across the world is nuclear weapons being produced over the world. So I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, if we don't invest in that sort of weaponry, how then could we defend our country against such weaponry? Does that make sense? It's like turning up to a gunfight with a knife. What can you see the benefits of being on both? If Trident was scrapped, for instance, and we were to invest that money elsewhere.
Do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, well, the benefits are that, well, I don't really know what the benefits are. It comes down to opinion, whether you think we should have nuclear weapons or not. And I'm not really going to get into that because I'm sure we can vote to change things like that.
Okay, well, regardless of the yes or no question, I'm against nuclear weapons. Whether we're part of the UK or part of or Scotland, I would want to get rid of nuclear weapons. And I get what you mean, but to be honest, if Iran or anywhere else in the world were to use their nuclear weapons against us, we're all dead. So what does it matter if we have them, What is the point in them? If we're already dead, we can't use them. To me, it just seems it's a bit of a daft question. And we have all these kind of London politicians with this very careful argument where they say, oh, we're going to get new nuclear weapons, but really we support getting rid of them around the world. Which I just think it's so daft. You have to lead by example. For me, I don't see why we should have nuclear weapons and these countries shouldn't. The only country in the world that has used nuclear weapons and has killed people mercilessly is the USA. And yet we're supposed to trust them with nuclear weapons and not others. I just think it's a ludicrous argument. I think we should lead the way and show the world how we can have a more peaceful nation. I don't think by investing in this threat and these awful bombs and this awful way of killing people, we're going to be able to lead by example. We don't have the moral high ground. They'll argue that they need the weapons to protect them from us, and we argue we need the weapons to protect them from them. They need the weapons to protect from us, and we need it to protect from them. And then it just ends up with everyone with nuclear weapons, and there's going to be an accident or there's going to be a war where they're used. It's never going to end anything but badly, and therefore I think we should lead by example, not reinvest in any of these weapons, maintain conventional forces, a Royal Navy, an Air Force and ground troops so we can defend ourselves. But I do not support nuclear weapons, whether we're part of the UK, part of the EU, part of the world or anything.
But that's something that yes, Scotland are actively seeking to do, is to scrap Trident.
So the Scottish Government wants to scrap nuclear weapons. I have never yet come across a Yes campaigner that doesn't want to scrap nuclear weapons. Yes, Scotland is a huge, big umbrella campaign, and inside that we have the SNP and the Scottish Government, we have the Scottish Green Party and the Socialist and Radical Indie and Business for Scotland and National Collective, who are a bunch of artists and folk like that. We have Women for Indie, we have so many really exciting groups, and some of them are members of political parties and some aren't. So right where I sit at my desk, everyone around me doesn't belong to any political party, but they all support morally not having nuclear weapons. I haven't yet found a Yes campaigner that wants nuclear weapons, but there must be one in Scotland.
Well, campaigning of removal of nuclear weapons isn't exclusive to the independence campaign. This can still go on as part of the UK.
Tony?
I personally agree with you with regards to both of these with regards to nuclear weapons. Right, I've always looked upon ourselves as being puppets of America anyway. My concern is that if we do gain independence, that we become a very poor state. Now, I know you're banding about here some figures with regards to percentages of this, that and the next thing, but history tells us that anywhere where the Britain has pulled out of with regards to the Commonwealth, more or less left these countries ravaged and destitute, right, not being able to govern. And that's one of my really big concerns, is that we alienate ourselves due to social nationalism, and I can't help but think about Hitler in the respect of how he drove nationalism, right, to the point of apocalyptic, if you will, right, and I'm concerned about that. I'm just wondering whether or not it might be a better thing that it's not the Scottish Nationalist Party that's driving this, but another elected government, say, that was either what we have in Labour, you know, as I say, that's my real concern, because I often think that people who are driven nationalists have got other agendas, you know, in the respect that, you know, that they're driving their own message. It's not really for the benefit of, it's more for the flag waving type of thing. And that's my real concern. I mean, I'm very, very proud of being Scottish. I've travelled a lot of the world and been very proud and been very well received, and I would still like to think that we would get that. And one of the other things that concerns me just now is the English press, right, are absolutely slating us at the moment, right, in the respect that they're sending us hate mail, if you will, in fact the letters, you know, about alright, if they want it, just let them go, you know, how dare they, you know, how do they think they're going to be so much better off? That's a real concern. It's a real concern to me.
I would be really concerned, and I would not be part of this campaign if it was nationalism. I'm not a nationalist. I was born in England, and so I feel equally English as I do Scottish. In fact, our house is divided in that my dad's English, my mum's Scottish, and my sister's Scottish, and me and my dad support England, and me and my sister support Scotland. My sister, though, however, is living in England and has done for the last 6 years, and I'm living in Scotland, and so we've got a really mixed family. That is modernity. That is the modern world. People come from all over the world and they mix. And I don't like nationalism that much either. I don't believe this campaign is just about flag waving or about the saltire or about anything to do with national identity. And I don't really like this idea of questioning that I've experienced in the UK, of questioning identity. Arguably, you turn that on the other side, and it's actually the No campaign that are being nationalists, but they're being British nationalists. Their message is British jobs for British workers, and these sorts of things. So for me, what's important is that it's democracy that's important. It is the political decision-making power and the control we have over our own lives. I don't care where you come from. I don't care where your friends or family come from. If they live here and want to make life better here, then they should vote yes in order to do that, because I would completely reject any kind of nationalism as well. I think things that have happened previously with nationalism has given it a kind of bad name, and that's why it's great to be a part of Yes Scotland, where there are Greens and there are Labour Party members who work in our office. So, you know, ours is a properly cross-party campaign. To me, it is not about national identity or where you come from. It's about you living here just now and wanting to make life better. In terms of kind of when the UK's pulled out before and absolutely decimated previous colonies, I mean, I guess the simplest answer to that is it's a completely different comparison. You're comparing apples and oranges. So the apple is Scotland, that already has a sustainable government, already has a lot of wealth, where comparing that to somewhere like India or Kenya, or in fact I think it was Kenyan Independence Day yesterday, where they have had a lot of issues. They didn't have infrastructure. We did basically ravage their villages and leave them without anything. And so they're very different circumstances. But I don't think if you were to ask a South African or someone in Malaysia or Singapore whether they would rather go back, they wouldn't. They would rather have control over their own future and make it better. So for me, again, that's the most important thing. We have got a lot of assets. We've got some £1.5 trillion worth of oil left, which is huge. We still have half of our resources left. We need to make sure we use the resources we have left to invest in people's lives. So I hope that kind of answered your question a wee bit.
Sophie, we'll go to you and then we've got a question up the back.
Yeah, that's right. It is a huge risk, and that's why when we're in the UK we can share the risks across the UK and also the benefits. And if it's just about making decisions in Scotland, then we already have that, because we have health, education, justice, local government and other devolved issues taken in Scotland, and then we have the strength, safety and security of defence and foreign policy being decided for us in the Westminster government. So I wouldn't want to give all that up so that we could also have those decisions in Scotland, when it's not like we don't get to vote for those decisions to also be taken in Westminster. It's democratic. We have two governments. We have the best of both worlds.
Right.
Can I ask the two speakers to explain to the students what their model is for distribution of wealth post-referendum? There seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding or a misconception about distribution of wealth after the referendum, in that some people believe that a vote for staying with the union means everything stays the same. But partly because of distribution of wealth and the ballot formula, things will not be the same. And the money that comes into Scotland will be completely different and not just the same as it is just now. So I'd like to hear both perspectives and let the students hear both perspectives.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, post-referendum, the Yes campaign released their white paper, which didn't give all the answers we hoped it would. So that's still a bit unclear, but I'm sure you're about to talk about that. With regards to distribution of wealth, yeah, it's not going to stay the same because our government's going to change in 2015. We have our economy getting back on track right now, and if we go independent, then we have years more of instability. So I think not giving up and not leaving the UK is the best option, so that we can work together, get our economy back on track, and then focus on issues like child poverty and things like that haven't really been dealt with greatly in Scotland.
Okay, so, sorry, what was your name?
Sorry?
What's your name, sorry?
Jerry Ferrara, I'm just hanging on these streets.
Like he was saying, like Jerry was saying, and I said, the No campaign always say that the future is more uncertain if you vote yes, whereas I would argue that if the decision-making power is in your own hands, you're creating your own future. But actually, to me, it's equally uncertain. There's no route that's going to be more certain than the other, which is why I would like the decision-making powers here. But they're actually talking about removing the Barnett formula. This is something that the Scottish Secretary of State has said that might be removed. It's something that Margaret Curran has hinted at as well. So the Barnett formula at the moment means that Scotland gets a block amount of money from all the money that we've already put in. So at the moment, those statistics are we put all the money that's in the UK Treasury, 9.9% of that has come from Scotland. And then we then get a proportion of that back to spend on health, education and transport and justice. So we get some of that money back, and then some of that money goes for the Scottish share and goes into embassies, it goes into taxation, it goes into like the welfare state and pensions and all these sorts of things. So we own our share of that at the moment anyway. Now when they're talking about removing the Barnett formula, I would be really worried about that, because they haven't told us what they would replace it with. Is it gonna... So to me that seems like a pretty fair model where we get back just about what we put in. In fact, I'd argue it should be more fair. But there's a huge kind of disquiet amongst a lot of English MPs and a lot of my family as well, who all think they subsidise Scotland and that it's unfair that that happens and that we shouldn't get the amount of money that we do. So they always argue we get more spent per person in the NHS than they do in England and Wales. And the reason for that is we put in more per person than the rest of England and Wales. So for me, that is as fair as it can be at the moment. So we don't really have an answer on what's going to happen to the Barnett consequentials. We don't really know how they're going to calculate it. And that's much more worrying to me, not even having the guarantee that that would stay the same. So I don't trust London politicians to do what is right by someone in Kilmores or by someone in Elgin. I trust them to do what is right by their own invested interests in London. I believe that's what they would do rather than think about people here. So it's to me, at the end of the day, the common sense position is that there would be uncertainty either way. You know, we have no faith that UK politicians are going to be able to do anything for unemployment and jobs with young people. We don't know what they're going to do about the Barnett formula. We don't know what powers they may or may not devolve. I don't remember this referendum, but in 1979 there was a referendum where they were told if you vote no, you'll get more powers, and that didn't happen for nearly 2 decades. So 20 years later, they devolved some powers to Scotland, which I think was a positive step. But you're just promising something that might never come, so you just don't know what's going to happen. So for me, I'd much rather bet on us having the powers and having control over everything.
We've got a question for Kirsty there.
Hi. Right, so our unemployment rate is so high, right? But then there's immigrants coming from everywhere. So how can us as a country be expected to bring down this employment rate when we've got people coming from everywhere and like basically taking the jobs? Like, where do both campaigns stand in that?
Well, that's something the UK government right now is like trying to tackle. Like an immigration cap. Immigration caps have been put on, so that's getting better. The unemployment issue, well, we just stand on like trying to tackle youth unemployment, and that's something that we're working towards. And also, even as part of the UK after the referendum, we still have the option of more devolution, so we could have more powers in Scotland as well, and that could be another way of tackling it. But really, either way, we have the deficit. I mean, even if we're independent Scotland, England would have to agree to write off all our debt anyway. So, yes, it's always uncertain either way, but I'd say it's far more uncertain being independent, because right now we know what we're on track to, we know our aims of the government, we know what we're striving for right now, which is tackling youth unemployment and immigration caps.
Okay, so immigration and social cohesion is something I'm passionate about outside this referendum debate, and it's something I'm very interested in, because I'm married to someone who's the son of a migrant. So he's Pakistani, so his dad came from India and his mum from Kenya. Their family have contributed a lot to Scottish society in terms of business and in terms of kind of cultural diversity. So I mean, there are definitely issues with people coming to the UK and not working, but there's definitely issues with people in Scottish society not working. And actually, you tend to find migrants taking a lot of jobs that Scottish people don't want. And so, you know, in a sense, you know, if Scottish people won't do them and they won't get done otherwise, then we do need someone to do it. Scotland's slightly different from the rest of the UK in that we have a different need for migrants. There is definitely issues in inner city parts of England and Wales. Where there's an issue with kind of inner city joblessness with different migrant communities. But Scotland is huge and we're nowhere near filled up yet. And so to me it is slightly simplistic to blame a lack of jobs on migrants, because it's not their fault. It's the fault of the government for not creating jobs for everyone. It is the fault of it. There is a stagnant economy that can't create jobs. There's not enough industry in Scotland. There's not enough decision-making power over economic levers to create an environment where business can flourish. And so to me, the problem with the lack of jobs is not any one nationality or any migrant. It's the fault of the kind of economic powers here. So Scotland isn't full up yet. We've got plenty of space. We have a different need for migrants. The Scottish Government is talking about introducing something called like a green card approach, where you identify skills that are needed in Scotland and bringing people over with those skills. But really it's low-skilled jobs where we also need folk filling. And if Scottish people don't want it, then people want to invest and raise their family in this society, then I would support that. So to me, it's like I said, it's I can understand why people blame immigrants. I can understand why, because they don't understand them and they've probably never met one and lived side by side with anyone who've come in from a different country. It's something I'm very passionate about. I think the UK immigration system is a complete mess. They don't know who's in the country. The UK Border Agency doesn't understand it. They don't know who's living where, and I think it would be much easier to manage on a small scale or on a smaller scale like Scotland, that we might actually understand where they're living. Right now, most migrants, you hear all the time story in Glasgow about migrants getting better housing, immigrants getting better housing than people in Scotland, but I try to take part once a year in food delivery in somewhere called Red Road in Glasgow, and it is only immigrants that live there, and they have no money and they have no jobs and they're not treated well, and we need to change the face of immigration in Scotland to have people understand the arguments. And we need to create more jobs for Scottish people. I think we need to also ask why there is such a problem in Scotland where there are so many Scots that generation after generation after generation after generation aren't getting jobs. And there needs to be something done by politicians and by society to step in and help the families that are facing this. And right now, you know, that doesn't really exist. So I would really love to design a welfare system whereby it is intelligent and it says, right, there is 80% of folk living in that street haven't had jobs for the last 3 generations, just for sake of argument. Why is that? and taking steps to improve their lives. I don't see that happening at a UK level. I see that more able to happen in Scotland. It's not going to happen overnight. We have to do a hell of a lot of work because it's just been allowed to decline for so long. But we have to start somewhere, and I hope that we'll make the right decision on the 18th September next year to kind of take those steps to start kind of stemming the tide of all the issues that we have.
Jerry, again.
Yeah, one of the students was just expressing a concern there, and would like to ask about the Scottish Government's approach to taxes like the bedroom tax. How would a new Scottish Government address issues such as that?
So the Scottish Government has said for the last 7 or 8 months that they would scrap the bedroom tax, that they think it is completely unacceptable to punish the most vulnerable in our society by taking money away from them. It's just end of. It's not only the bedroom tax. I mean, there are the bedroom tax is shocking, and so many people. In fact, there was almost an eviction a few weeks ago because someone wasn't able to pay their rent, and we should be trying to support people into supporting themselves rather than just chucking them out, discarding them at the edges of society. So the Scottish Government, if we vote yes, would get rid of the bedroom tax, and so. You know, I hope that kind of the bedroom tax is a kind of a feature of the welfare system. Taxation is slightly different. So the Scottish Government has laid out its taxation plans as well in their white paper. I've not read it. I'm sure it's a thoroughly interesting 12-hour read if anyone gets really bored.
And to get anything else?
Actually, I've got a question. Just quite quickly, but it's one again that's topical. Obviously, it's been big media recently. 2 stories, but I'm going to link them together whether it's relevant or not. 11% pay rise for MPs. A lot of them saying that they're opposing it, but obviously we know if all of us were offered an 11% pay rise, we may oppose it, but we'll take it. And also George Osborne's announcement that pension age will be increased to 70, despite the fact that in Calton and Glasgow life expectancy is 54. Yeah, you know, we're going to be saving quite a bit of money on that one. So I just want to know. You know, obviously that's sort of coming from Westminster slightly, you know, and things. So I'm wanting to know if the Yes campaign, because again I haven't read the white paper. I've not spent my 12 hours doing that, but I'm wondering if you have any insight into if you know the Yes campaign's going to alter that.
Pensions and what was the first one?
Well, it was the 11% pay rise because
rise.
I added that in basically just because obviously it's a kind of austerity thing, you know, the rich are getting richer and, you know, the ones that are really hard working and grafting and things like that are having to work longer and sometimes beyond the age that they're actually expected to live.
Yeah, no, it's an important one. To be fair to, I think from my own understanding, to be fair to David Cameron and the kind of Labour Party and the Conservative Party, they don't actually want the 11% rate pay rise. They don't think that's right. So to be fair to them, they realise that that's wrong. But however, they've conveniently managed to place it in the lap of someone else, and it's someone else's fault that they're getting a pay rise. I mean, I still think they should maybe donate that 11% to charity, and we'll see whether any of them actually do donate extra money to charity rather than have it themselves. So it does kind of, to me, it shows the kind of the state of affairs that the rich are getting richer and the poor are not only kind of either losing jobs and facing redundancy, but they're also facing rising kind of food bills and energy bills. So they're taking away what little meagre money they already got, and more things are getting eaten into it. You know, food is more expensive, shopping is more expensive. I'm always shocked when I get to the checkout and it says like 40 quid or 60 quid and I'm like, oh my god, I don't even have much in there. So there is a big problem with kind of rising energy bills, which the UK government is not really doing very much about. In terms of pensions as well, I think it's shocking that in a lot of areas in Scotland, people are basically going to be expected to work until they die. They have no reprieve from work, and so it's wrong. Now, the Scottish Government has said that they would look into the pension age and that they aren't sure that they would increase it. They haven't given us a firm answer on how they are doing it, because there are areas of Scotland that live till they're 64, live till they're 90, live till they're 100 or whatever, but there are also areas where the average life expectancy is 54, and so there's a huge problem. We need to bring those level rather than just have a very short-term solution of punishing those here or rewarding those up here who are able to live longer. We need to take action to make sure that everyone is living to a much older age, rather than kind of punishing people for not living to that age. What the Scottish Government has done is their policy is to have something called a triple lock pension, which is a fancy word for saying that the pension amount that we get will increase either in line with wages, which aren't rising very fast, we know, or it will rise with inflation, or it will rise by 2.5% every year. So either way, there's a guaranteed increase. It will be whichever is the highest of those. So say wages do rise by 3% one year, then the pension will increase by that as well. So that's a much fairer system to work it by. I discovered something absolutely shocking about a week ago in the office. They'd done some research to work out that those my age and our age, right, we would have to work longer, pay more in national contributions, and then get less back. So although I'm not thinking about my pension at the moment because I'm only 25, apparently I should have been thinking about it 10 years ago. And it's, the pensions, to use pensions and the security of pensions as a reason to stay inside the UK is just bizarre, because pensions are so bad. I'm dreading getting to the point where I'm 70 and needing to rely only on a pension, because at the rate it's going at, there'd just be nothing for me. So we need to take action now to invest in pension and invest in all of our futures. And that will not happen as part of the UK government. Whatever colour, it could be red, blue or yellow, it doesn't matter what party's in power they're no changing it for us. We have to do it ourselves, and we need to take steps now to invest in all of our futures so that when we get old, and it's kind of weird to think you have to start working now and to see results in 60 years, but we kind of do. It's a huge issue, and I'm slightly scared now. I'm going to have to look into a pension at some point.
Right, Emma.
Do you want Sophie to get back on that point?
You get back on that, and then I think we're going to need to...
Well, the increasing of the retirement age to 70 is sort of inevitable because people are living longer, and obviously, unfortunately, there's some areas in Glasgow that have life expectancies almost close to developing countries' life expectancies, so that really needs to be worked on, increasing living standards. But the retirement age increasing is inevitable because people are living longer, we're staying in education longer, we're not working for as long because it's taking so long for us all to find jobs once we leave our studies or once we leave school. So this gap between leaving education and retiring is getting smaller and smaller. So we're getting more out of our pension than we're actually contributing, and that's not sustainable. So that's partly why, but I suppose, again, back to the point, in fact, no, if we work together, everyone across the UK, we're the next generation. We can change these things. We've all got it within us. We can do it. Whether times are tough and we're working to make it better, we can all do it. We've just got to keep going.
Thanks very much. Ladies, thank you very much for taking the time to come down to the college today. I'm sorry things got off to a kind of slower start than we would have hoped. Thanks very much for putting your cases forward as you did. I know myself, I'm a wee bit wiser as to ifs and buts now, and I know they're going to be flying about for a while. Guys, thanks very much for attending today. I know some of you have got transport and that to try and catch in that just now, so thank you very much for attending today. And I think we should applaud the the young ladies for their time together.